The story begins by showing us Craig with his sister Jessica, and he is talking about the flag war. Craig says they competed against the king's team, and when they beat them, they saved the kids from the creek. Craig is on his way to meet his friends, and they were decorating the creek to make it like it used to be. But suddenly, we saw that Omar had arrived, and that he would no longer be the guard because it was not necessary anymore. We begin to see that Craig is introducing him to the other kids in the creek, and they were surprised that he was no longer the green poncho. Then they volunteer to make a candy delivery and are on their way to get to the other side, where we can see that they are singing to set the mood for the customers, and that they had been interrupted by the arrival of a kid. He starts to say that he worked for the king and that he was being bothered by what he did to his hair. Omar feels guilty for the problems he caused and that he would always be the green poncho for the kids at the creek. But suddenly, we see that they were in trouble, and they arrive in time to save them from a fall. The kids thank them for saving their friend, and they are recognized as the heroes of the creek. So the girl says that they have to be rewarded, and gives them her necklace as a sign of gratitude. Omar realizes that it was a piece of the cube that had belonged to the king, and that they were hidden throughout his kingdom. So they decide that they are going to gather the pieces and search for the treasure that was in the heart of the forest. Craig decides to name Omar as part of his team, and says that they are ready to start their adventure. We begin to see that they are investigating in search of the pieces, and that they had been hit by the fall of a child. The boy begins to tell them that he was looking for ingredients, and that he had formed a restaurant with his best friends. Kelsey realizes that they only had sandwiches, because one of the chefs wouldn't let them cook anything else. Then he starts cooking something that wasn't on the menu, and the team realizes that it was too delicious. But suddenly, we see that he ends up being scolded, and that the head chef had one of the pieces. So they decide that they would have a competition, and that they would win the battle to get the piece. We start to see that they are competing in a food battle, and that they are having problems because they didn't know how to cook, which ends up causing them to be the losers, and the chef to be named the winner of the contest. So the boy decides that he would challenge him, and the winning chef would be named as the boss. Then they begin to prepare to start with the competition, and he manages to win with the best of his recipes. The chef realizes that he was wrong, and gives them the piece so they can forgive him. Then they go on their way to continue investigating, and they find a village that was hidden in the creek, where we can see that they were set as if it was a video game, and they meet with the mayor to tell them their story. She begins to tell them that her village received a gift from the former king, and that one day it was stolen by an unknown person. So they realize that it was one of the pieces, and that it was hidden in the lair of the monsters, which are mosquitoes that have bothered their people, and were waiting for the heroes to end their problem. Omar begins to tell her that they came to help them, and they will solve the problem to save their village. They then begin to prepare with the necessary equipment, and destroy the jars to get money. We start to see that they are on their way to find the treasure, and that they are going to have a battle against the group of monsters, where we can see that they use their powers to defeat them, and that Omar is being controlled by the attack of the mosquitoes. So they decide that they would save their friend, and manage to defeat him so he returns to normal. They then open the chest to finish the mission, and we see that they are named as the heroes of their village. The team returns to the city to meet with Kenneth, and begin to be attacked by a group of drones. But suddenly we see that Xavier comes out of his house and starts to complain to them because they destroyed his drones. JP starts telling him that they were looking for his brother, and Xavier realizes that they were hiding something. They then go on their way to see the elders of the creek, and they call Kenneth to ask about the pieces. But suddenly we see that Mark was angry and claims to his friend that he didn't keep his necklace, which ends up causing them to start arguing, and the group is separated because of their friend's behavior. They then go on the way with Kenneth's things and start watching an anime to solve the mystery, where they are talking about special powers, and they manage to realize what was the heart of the forest. So they say that they have to keep investigating, and they will look for the pieces to solve the mystery. While in the distance they were being watched, and Xavier was planning to solve the mystery earlier. In the next morning they continue investigating in search of the pieces, and they find a place that had missing objects, where we can see that they had many lockers, and that they kept objects that were in the creek. They start to say that they are looking for some pieces, and Salma answers them that she can't give it to them because it was found some years ago, and she would only give it to the person who lost it. So they decide that they would try to bribe her, and Salma starts laughing because she wouldn't change her mind. She starts telling them that a few years ago she lost her stuffed animal, and that was the main reason to help people, which ends up causing JP to feel guilty and not tell his friends that he found the stuffed animal. While at the creek, they are thinking how to trick the girl and plan to dress Gibson to get the piece. Then he starts pretending that he had lost the object, and succeeds in fooling her that he was the real owner. But suddenly we see that he continues with the lies, and she manages to realize that she was being deceived. So she decides that she will ban them from entry and that they will be part of the wall of lying people, while his friend manages to arrive in time and ends up confessing that he had found the doll. JP begins to tell them that he found it on the river, and when he returned home, he gave it to his pet. Salma is happy to finally know the truth, and we see that she gives it back so his cat can keep it. Then she tells them that she would give them another chance and that she would give them the piece as a sign of gratitude. In the next morning, they continue their investigation in search of the pieces and end up being invited to have a competition, which has as a reward one of the pieces of the cube, and that the winning participant will be the one who does not lose the gaze. We begin to see that they are playing to win the competition and end up being defeated very easily. Then they start to say that they will have their revenge, but they only want a few days to practice. We go to Craig's family's house and they plan to use a lizard to improve their looks. We start to see that they are practicing for the staring competition and that they do several trainings so they can get ready. The team returns to the creek to meet with the girl and says she was waiting for them to return from training. Then they start getting ready to start with the competition, and the girl was amazed by the concentration he has. But suddenly we see that they were being attacked and they were still concentrating to not lose the competition. She starts to tell him that he became very powerful and that she is surprised that he has come so far. Craig manages to realize that the invisible child was there, and we see that thanks to that, he ends up being the winner. So the girl accepts that she was finally defeated and gives him the piece as a proof of his victory. Omar begins to remember that he was Maya's friend and that one day he was betrayed when she joined King Xavier. So he made the decision that he would be the green poncho and protect the creek to get his friend back. Then Omar says that he will go on a date with Maya and that he is nervous because they had been enemies. Maya joins them to start talking, and Omar starts talking about the heart of the forest. But suddenly we see that his friend stops him because it is not the right time to talk about the investigation. They return with their team to continue with the investigation and enter a cave that was full of stars. Then they realize that there was a piece and that there was no light in the cave to get it. So they decide that they have to make a machine and use homemade materials to make their invention. We start to see that they are using the machine to illuminate the cave and that they are able to find the location of the piece. But suddenly we see that the machine was disconnected and that there was someone hiding in the darkness of the cave who takes advantage of the moment to steal the piece and manages to escape before they can stop him. So they say that he would be their new rival and that they would solve the mystery while they discover his identity. Then they return to the base to continue with the investigation, and they are remembering when they got the pieces, but that they had been attacked by a mysterious person and they have to find him to get the piece. They then begin to say that they have to find out who the disguised person is and that they had made a list of the main suspects because they are the kids they have had problems with, and they start investigating them to look for the mystery person, with which they realize that they were not looking for the pieces and that they were wrong about the persons on the list. But suddenly we see that they also suspected Maya and that Omar doesn't want to investigate her because she was his friend. His friends start to say that they know how he feels and that they have to investigate her to solve the mystery. We go to the baseball field and Maya is training with her baseball team. They realize that she has the skills to be the mystery person and that they are going to keep investigating to find out the truth. Omar decides to go on a date with her and realizes that she had one of the pieces. Omar begins to claim that she betrayed him and that she put on a disguise to steal the piece, but suddenly we see that he was wrong and that they had been attacked by the real red poncho while his friends were hiding and start attacking him to get the piece. Then he uses his vehicle to escape from the creek and Maya claims them that they did not trust her. Craig manages to realize that they were wrong and that the real culprit was Xavier. Xavier begins to tell that when they lost the war, it was the end of his reign and that he left the creek because he was left without friends, which ended up causing him to feel very lonely, and his sister helped him to find another hobby. So he made the decision that he would buy new drones and planned to use them to have his own army, while Craig's team was looking for his brother and began to investigate them to find out what they were planning. Then he asked his brother about the heart of the forest and that he needed the pieces to find the location. So he made the decision that he would be the red poncho and that he would have his revenge to become king again. We start to see that he had training at his sister's gym, and as time went on, he improved his skills. We go to the base and the team is investigating to take down Xavier because they want to prevent him from getting the pieces and making the wish to become king again. Then they go on their way to look for the other pieces, and we see that no one in the forest had any of them. But suddenly we see that they fell into some holes and ended up arriving to the city of moles. The hands begin to say that it was the prophecy and that they were the kids from the sky who were looking for their treasure. The mole starts telling them the legend of their town and says that they were were visited by the ancient King Kenneth. But suddenly we see that they weren't listening to him, and they get the treasure to return to the surface. We begin to see that they were still investigating in search of the pieces, and were very close to solving the mystery. While the red poncho was waiting for them to steal the pieces, and was surprised that they discovered his identity, Xavier begins to tell them that he found 5 of the pieces, and uses the drones to escape from the forest. The team goes on their way to continue the investigation, and they find a piece that was hidden in the water. But suddenly we see that they had been attacked, and that again, Xavier had stolen the piece. We start to see that they were still investigating to get the pieces, and they kept losing each one of them. So they decide that they have to stop him, and they start fighting to take down the former king. But suddenly we see that they end up being defeated, and he manages to escape with another of the pieces. The team begins to say that they have lost many of the pieces, and that they will do something different to solve the mystery. They then go to the house to meet with Xavier, and start counting the pieces to see if it was complete. They realize that only one piece is missing, and Omar manages to remember that it was the one his friend had. We start to see that they are running to meet Maya, and they use different paths to be the first to arrive. But suddenly we see that they arrived at the same time, and she closes the door because she was angry. Maya begins to remember that when they lost the battle, she decided to go back home, and that she would not return to the creek to continue with her life. Then she realized that she needed a distraction, and that she would join a team to make new friends. One day, she began to remember about the pieces of the cube, and that she found one of the pieces when she was given her cloak. So she made the decision that she would give it to her friend, and that she ended up throwing it when she felt betrayed. We go to the creek, and Craig is investigating looking for the piece. But suddenly, we see that Xavier had arrived to make an alliance, and they crossed their fingers while they were swearing. They then go home to continue with their plans, and program the drones to search for the piece. We start to see that they are on their way in search of the piece, and that they were able to get it with their teamwork. So Xavier says that he can keep it, and that they would work as a team to solve the mystery. While Omar meets with Maya to apologize to her, and says he was sorry for everything he caused. But suddenly we see that he gets a call, and his friend tells him that they found the piece. We go to the creek, and Craig tells his team that they have everything they need to solve the mystery, because Xavier had become his friend, and they made an alliance to get the last piece. His friends start saying that they didn't trust Xavier, and that they would go through with the mission because they trusted Craig. They then go to the base to put the pieces together, and they manage to make it complete again. In the next morning, they begin to prepare to start with the mission, and Craig tells his brother that he will have the adventure of his life. We go to the creek, and the team is investigating to solve the mystery. We begin to see that they are on their way in search of the heart of the forest, and that they find a passageway that was hidden in the waterfall, where we can see that there was a kind of tunnel, and that Xavier betrays them because he felt rejected. Craig starts to say that he thought they were friends, and Xavier replies that he was the only person who treated him differently, because his friends didn't give him a chance, and he was being treated like he was a bad person. Then he uses the drones so they can't move, and we see that by accident, he was also going to be attacked. The team goes running to escape the drones, and Kenneth realizes that they were in trouble. We return with the team, and they were able to reach the last of the clues. But suddenly we see that they were still under attack, and they were trying to hide so the drones would leave, while the other team had jumped down a tunnel, and they managed to realize that they were in a factory. Omar tells his friends that they can use the elevator, and we see that they again end up being attacked. We start to see that they are running to escape the drones, and that they tell their brother that they needed his help, while his friends were fighting to defeat the drones and work as a team to take down the robots. Xavier begins to apologize for betraying them, and says that he was just looking to be accepted into their team. But suddenly we see that they were still under attack, and Xavier decides to sacrifice himself so they can escape. We go to Craig, and he was being attacked by a jelly beast. But suddenly we see that his brother had arrived, and he met up with Kenneth to save them from danger. He then goes on his way to look for his friends, and he manages to find the heart of the forest. Craig begins to say that he was looking for his friends, and asks him as a wish to meet them again, to which the heart replies that he has to make a sacrifice, and we see that the former king gave up his friendship necklace, while Craig decides that he would give him his map because it was necessary the greatest sacrifice. We begin to see Craig is remembering the adventures with his friends, and that he would do whatever it takes to be with them again, with which he manages to activate the magic of the forest, and his friends return for the wish he asked for. Then the other team arrives to join them, and Kenneth is happy to have his necklace back. Kenneth starts to say not to worry about the future, and that they will always be united by the adventures they had, so they are happy that they solved the mystery, and they accept Xavier as part of their friends. This is how the movie ends. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on what more movies you would like to see on the channel.